Let the torch of freedom burn.
Welcome to the intersection of faith and the culture. It's WallBuilders Live. We are talking about the hottest topics of the day on policy, faith, the culture, and yes, sometimes that includes guns. It includes self-defense. It includes the biblical right of self-defense, things like the Castle Doctrine that go all the way back to the Old Testament. Certainly the concept of the first law of nature, which is self-defense. These are things we talk about often on WallBuilders. We've talked often about how we go out and we do our constitutional defense course. In fact, we just did that back in December with David and Cheryl Barton and Tim Barton, and we just had a great time. Took a lot of legislators out there, and I just got back last week. We took 300 citizens from across the nation of all ages that went with us to train and learn how to defend their family, but also learn the intellectual ammunition of how to defend the Constitution itself. And so that is a very hot topic today with the recent shootings in America, with all the calls for gun control. So we thought this would be a good time to share the testimony of Congressman Barry Loudermilk. He has been in that situation. He was one of the Republican congressmen on that softball field when the lunatic showed up and tried to take as many lives as he could. And unfortunately, those congressmen were not even allowed to carry their weapons to be able to defend themselves. So his testimony is amazing. We're going to pick up where we left off. He gave this at our ProFamily Legislators Conference. That's something we do every year with state reps and senators from across the nation. You should send or encourage your state rep or your state senator to go to that. It is a great weekend of fellowship and encouraging each other and iron sharpening iron. And we just have a lot of great speakers. And Barry was one of those great speakers a few months ago, and we wanted to share that presentation with you. So we're going to dive back into that. So today, David Barton is not with us, America's premier historian and our founder, nor is Tim Barton, national speaker and pastor and president of WallBuilders. Today, we're just going to go straight to the ProFamily Legislators Conference and give you a chance to hear from Barry Loudermilk. I'm Rick Green. I'm America's Constitution coach. Let's head out to the ProFamily Legislators Conference.
When they came and they pulled my wife and I out of the car, we're sitting on the side of the interstate waiting on the ambulance to take us. She looks at me and she says, "You know this is for a purpose." I'm like, "Yeah." So we talk about this for a little bit. And she reminded me of something at that point. She said, "You know, when you were traveling with Vice President Pence," and I think this was at the hospital when we were in the hospital. She said, "Well, you were traveling with Vice President Pence just this last weekend, and you guys were going from venue to venue in Atlanta there. You told me something. The Secret Service told you, stay on the Vice President's heels. Where he goes, you go. Where he stops, you stop. Stay in the bubble. That protective bubble." I said, "Yeah." She said, "I think we're in a bubble. I think we're in God's bubble." Some of the hospital staff found out I was one of the guys on the baseball field, and they're like, "Whoo, you got tough luck, buddy." But that's okay. 2 life-changing events. We'll just learn from those and we'll move on. 2 weeks after that, we had been cooped up at home. She had a fractured sternum. I had a lot of external, internal injuries, nothing that required extended hospital stay. So the doctor said, "Stay at home, just get some rest, and when you feel like it, get back out again." But I don't know if you guys know what it's like to be cooped up at home, right? So we got to get out. So we decided to go for a drive in the North Georgia mountains. We're borrowing our daughter's car. We're going up a divided 4-lane when my wife hears something hit the back of the car. She said, "What was that?" I said, "Oh, probably just a rock we ran over." She said, "Rocks hit underneath the car. They don't hit behind the car." A while later, this is what was found embedded in the back of the car. That's the FBI agent holding the AR round that has markings on it indicating that it was a silencer. The picture on the right is the dowel where they were doing the trajectory, the ballistics test, which was directly to the headrest of the driver's side, but the elevation was off. They opened it as an attempted assassination on a federally elected official. They believe he was laying prone on the side of the highway waiting for us to come by. It's one thing to be targeted because you're part of a group. Now this is personal. This has a huge impact. Now I'm looking over my shoulder wherever we go. My family is impacted. Security is much higher at our house. My kids want to know everywhere we're going at every moment. People are kind of joking around with us like, "Well, I don't know if we want to travel with you guys," but I'm comforted because bad things happen in threes, right? Then in January of 2018, January 31st, we get on an Amtrak train to go to West Virginia for a Republican conference with other members of Congress when this garbage truck pulled across the tracks and we hit it doing 60 miles an hour and derailed part of the train, threw us all over the train. I remember looking at my wife as she saw the garbage truck flying through the air. One was killed immediately on impact. I looked at her and I said, does this mean anything? This is the least traumatic thing that we've ever been through. You start wondering, what is the purpose? You start asking, God, why am I going through all this? In fact, my oldest son told me at his birthday party, he said, Dad, the biggest gift you could give me is never call me again, because he happened to be the first one we called in the first 3 instances. I happened to be texting with my daughter when we had the train wreck. She asked me a question, and I sent back a text. I said, hang on, we just had a train wreck. She said, you're kidding, right? And I think maybe she thought about it. No, this is him. He probably isn't. But God brought the scripture to us. We glory in tribulations, also knowing that tribulations worketh patience, and patience experience, and experience hope. What this tells us, take glory and joy in these things that you go through, because it's God training you, just like He trains a soldier for battle. Because once you go through it, it teaches you perseverance. God's going to bring me through this. And then you learn to be patient, to wait on God to work. And then you have the hope that you're going to get through it because God brought you through it before, just like He brought this nation through the worst times through history. And what we're going through right now isn't nothing like we went through during the American Revolution, right? So God's teaching us something. Now, people ask me all the time, what was going through your mind during all this? Well, there's all kind of things that were going through my mind, but especially during the baseball shooting. The one thing that never went through my mind was wait till I get back to Capitol Hill, because I'm going to pass a law. Never went through my mind because, there isn't a single law in the world I could pass that would have changed one thing about that incident.
All right, friends, sorry, we got to take a quick break. Hate to interrupt Congressman Loudermilk, but we've got to take a break. We'll be right back. You are listening to WallBuilders Live. Have you ever wanted to learn more about the United States Constitution, but just felt like, man, the classes are boring, or it's just that old language from 200 years ago, or I don't know where to start? People want to know, but it gets frustrating because you don't know where to look for truth about the Constitution either. Well, we've got a special program for you available now called Constitution Alive with David Barton and Rick Green, and it's actually a teaching done on the Constitution at Independence Hall in the very room where the Constitution was framed. We take you both to Philadelphia, the cradle of liberty in Independence Hall, and to the WallBuilders Library, where David Barton brings the history to life to teach the original intent of our founding fathers. We call it the Quick Start Guide to the Constitution because in just a few hours through these videos, you will learn the Citizen's Guide to America's Constitution. You'll learn what you need to do to help save our constitutional republic. It's fun, it's entertaining, and it's going to inspire you to do your part to preserve freedom for future generations. It's called Constitution Alive with David Barton and Rick Green. You can find out more information on our website now at wallbuilders.com. Welcome back to WallBuilders Live. Thanks for staying with us today. Today's program is actually a recorded program. It's a presentation at the ProFamily Legislators Conference. It's Congressman Barry Loudermilk. Let's jump right back in where we left off before the break.
The shooter had evil in his heart. He had no respect for the law, and he was already violating dozens of state and federal laws. So what would another law matter when he had no respect for law? None whatsoever. When we're laying on the side of the interstate waiting for the ambulance to take us to the hospital after the car wreck, where the guy was distracted and driving, running 110 miles an hour and passing on the right, there isn't a single law I could have passed to change that, because it's speeding is illegal, distracted driving is illegal, and it's illegal to pass on the right. There's nothing that me as a lawmaker could do to change that. It's already illegal to try to kill somebody, whether they're a congressman or not, when they're driving down the interstate, right? And those crossing guards, don't go around them. It could be deadly. This is why I say it's important ultimately important for faith leaders to be engaged in the process of what we're going on if we're going to save our communities, because in every instance that I had spelled out, it was a disrespect for law and authority, or it was an act of evil. And government cannot end evil. Only Jesus Christ can end evil. If we're going to change America, we have to engage our faith leaders. Now, let me just hit a couple of high areas here for you. We engaged in our faith leaders. I've partnered with WallBuilders. They come up. We invite pastors from our communities to come, and we spend 3 days in Washington, D.C. engaging them, because part of the problem we have in churches today is, this is American flag over here, us patriots that are politicians, we're over here on this side, and then on Sunday we go over to where the Christian flag is over here, and then we run back over to this side. And then the pastors, they stay over here by the Christian flag, and then on Independence Day they'll run over to this side, and then they go back. Because we've created our own separation of church and state amongst ourselves. We need these guys to be over on this side most of the time, engaging in culture. But also we need to identify ourselves as spiritual leaders in the community as well, and partnering with our pastors. Now, let me warn you, if you're going to be a spiritual leader in your community, there will be a cost. And you've heard that over and over again in this conference, that there is a cost. We need courage. We need to be able to stand up. It is a fight. It's a continual fight. Paul tells Timothy, now therefore endure the hardships as a good soldier of Christ. I know a lot of people that like to join us with the victory of being a soldier of Christ. That isn't what it says. It says in the hardships. Being a good soldier. Good soldiers run into gunfire. They don't run away from it. Good soldiers look to win by fighting, not by cowering or stepping back. This is one I had to learn. So, we're already told to take glory. Be joyful in tribulations. So we all want to be happy and blessed, right? So we should be happy by going through the tribulations for Jesus. Now, if you want to be blessed, you're blessed when men shall revile you and persecute you, and shall say all manner of evil against you falsely for my name's sake. And revile is to criticize in an abusive or angrily insulting manner. I was talking with David just before I came up, and I said one of the common themes I'm hearing in here is the left is infuriated with us. And it isn't because you're Republican. It isn't because you're conservative. It's because you're Christian. And you will be attacked. Let me share just a little bit of what we've faced.
Stay tuned, folks. We've got to take a quick break. We'll be right back. You're listening to Barry Loudermilk, Congressman Barry Loudermilk of Georgia. We'll be right back on WallBuilders Live.
This is Tim Barton from WallBuilders with another moment from American history. Many today wrongly claim our founding fathers were largely atheists, agnostics, and deists. Certainly some founders were less religious than others, but even they were not irreligious. Consider Benjamin Franklin. Definitely one of the least religious among them, yet when the delegates at the Constitutional Convention hit an impasse in their deliberations, it was Franklin who called them to prayer, invoking numerous scriptures to make his point. As he reminded them, God governs in the affairs of men, and if a sparrow cannot fall to the ground without his notice, is it probable that an empire can rise without his aid? We have been assured in the sacred writings that except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it. I firmly believe this. So, even the least religious of America's founders urged public prayer and dependence on God. For more information about the faith of the founding fathers, go to wallbuilders.com.
Thanks for staying with us, folks. We're going to jump right back into where we were at the ProFamily Legislators Conference. This is a presentation by Congressman Barry Loudermilk.
On my Facebook, some of these are just unbelievable. Sire, I love being called sire. I'm not sure that's what he meant, but you, sire, are human garbage. You don't believe in faith, family, or freedom. You believe in the same Nazi garbage the rest of your party is shoveling. You are a disgrace. I wish there was a hell so you and your family could burn in it for all eternity. But I guess I'll have to settle for simpler justice. Having to spend time with you is a fate worse than death for your family. These are the mild ones. Congressman, you're having a blank laugh. I don't even live in your country, and I think you're a greedy blank pig. I'm telling you, these are the mild ones. If you're so blank pro-life, why don't you blank fully fund the VA? Blank actually, why don't you blank fully fund national health care for blank everyone in America? Blank. Republicans aren't pro-life, they just blank to pictures of fetuses, you blank pervert. I also like what he says, this is drunk me and real me. Hey, Congressman Barry Loudermilk, this one goes out to you and your blank, you piece of blank southern racist, homophobic white trash. This was in response to the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Yay, we get a $1.5 trillion debt. I love it when the Democrats care about debt and deficit when it's benefiting the American people, all right? The workers. We get a $1.5 trillion deficit and your corporate overlords get billions in tax cuts and teachers get no deduction for their school supplies. You're immoral, disgusting, anti-anything remotely related to Jesus. You were already spineless and now you've sold your soul too. I'll pray for you. I hope you find redemption. Why would we believe a member of the pedophile party? It's interesting, I had one person who was continually calling me a pedophile, put up pictures of my grandchildren. He died of a brain tumor just about 2 months after he started all that. So even after all that, Lord wakes me up at 2 o'clock in the morning during impeachment. He says, this is what you need to say. Now I want to show you this little video clip was my floor speech during impeachment, which we had to turn our phones off in our offices, both in Washington, D.C. and in the district for 2 weeks because of the vile people calling, and some of them identified as Republicans and some as Christian.
Madam Speaker, I rise today in opposition not only to these articles of impeachment, but in strong opposition to the process that has brought us to this point. Our Constitution and Bill of Rights are all about process. Our founders knew that a government without constraints could accuse anyone of any crime at any time, even without compelling evidence. That's why the 5th and the 14th Amendments established a bedrock principle of innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. But on November the 14th, Speaker Pelosi informed the press that the president should prove his innocence when she stated, Mr. President, if you have anything that shows your innocence, then he should make that known. The Constitution also guarantees that the accused can call witnesses to testify on their behalf, but the Republicans and the president were continually denied that right throughout this process. The Sixth Amendment guarantees the right of the defendant to face their accuser, but not only have the Democrats prohibited Republicans and the president from questioning the so-called whistleblower, his identity has been kept secret. Before you take this historic vote today, 1 week before Christmas, I want you to keep this in mind. When Jesus was falsely accused of treason, Pontius Pilate gave Jesus the opportunity to face his accusers. During that sham trial, Pontius Pilate afforded more rights to Jesus than the Democrats have afforded this president in this process. I yield back.
That wasn't the response I got from most of the people out there.
Our friends, last break of the day. I'm sorry to interrupt. Once again, we'll get the conclusion of Congressman Barry Loudermilk's talk when we return on WallBuilders Live. Have you noticed the vacuum of leadership in America? We're looking around for leaders of principle to step up, and too often, no one is there. God is raising up a generation of young leaders with a passion for impacting the world around them. They're crying out for the mentorship and leadership training they need. Patriot Academy was created to meet that need. Patriot Academy graduates now serve in state capitals around America, in the halls of Congress, in business, in the film industry, in the pulpit, and every area of the culture. They're leading effectively and impacting the world around them. Patriot Academy is now expanding across the nation, and now's your chance to experience this life-changing week that trains champions to change the world. Visit patriotacademy.com for dates and locations. Our core program is still for young leaders 16 to 25 years old, but we also now have a citizen track for adults. So visit the website today to learn more. Help us fill the void of leadership in America. Join us in training champions to change the world at patriotacademy.com. We're back here on WallBuilders Live. Thanks for staying with us today. It is time for the conclusion of Congressman Barry Loudermilk's presentation at the ProFamily Legislators Conference.
My wife and I go back home, walking out of Kroger, and a guy looks, while we're in Kroger, a lady comes running up to me and hugs me. She said, "That was a wonderful floor speech." I'm like, "Oh, thank you." Most of my staff were mad at me over it. Get in the parking lot, and the guy looks at me and he says, "Are you that congressman that compared Trump to Jesus?" No, actually, I was comparing Nancy Pelosi to Pontius Pilate. There's a big difference between the two. But I even had conservative talk show hosts on the air criticizing it, say you should never bring Jesus into a political argument. But I believe the Bible is there for every aspect of our lives, and Jesus' trial was there for a purpose, and we built our jurisprudence upon that. Here's a little bit of the response we got. Your grandchildren will see in school as an example of Republican madness for generations. They will have long since changed their name. So embarrassed that they'll change their name from mine. Are you mentally ill? If hell exists, there's a special place in it just for you. Pastors preached sermons about how evil that less than 2-minute floor speech was. They're attacking us, especially when we stand for truth. As David said in the opening session, they're going to attack you because of what you believe. There was one other response out of that as well. I would be thrilled if they gave Trump the exact same treatment that Pontius Pilate gave Jesus. And I'm telling you, these are the mild ones out there. We received death threats. Now, the reason I'm giving you so much good news is the good news is I'm standing here today. Satan has not defeated us. God has put a bubble around you because he's ordained you to take the fight to preserve the freedom so the frontline warriors in spiritual warfare and cultural change can still have the freedom to assemble, the freedom of religion, but they have to have the courage to stand up and exercise those freedoms. And we have to have the courage to partner with them to do so. We can't win this as legislators because we can't end evil. But we can protect the freedoms for those who are out doing cultural change. And we can have the courage ourselves to identify as spiritual leaders as well. But when you do that, you are going to open the door for attack. If you just stand back and you're another politician, and let me tell you what the word politics means to most people. The word is poly is many, and ticks are blood-sucking parasites. If that's the course you take, you probably won't get as much attack. But I want to hear the words, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." We can win. We are winning. And the reason I know we're winning is because we're fighting. You see, when my dad landed at D-Day as a medic, he told me, the enemy didn't fight us when we were training in England. They didn't shoot at us from Normandy when we got on the boats to cross the channel. They didn't shoot at us when we got on the Higgins boats. But as soon as our feet hit the sand, that's when they started fighting, because we started taking the ground, and the enemy fights harder the more ground you take. We're winning. We'll keep winning. But we need all of us to stand together and fight as one. God bless you. God bless every state here, and God bless America. Thank you.
Well, friends, that was Congressman Barry Loudermilk speaking at the ProFamily Legislators Conference. If you happen to tune in with us today and miss yesterday's program, or maybe even late today, both of those programs are available at our website. It's a two-part presentation, so check out WallBuildersLive.com. You can get today's program right now on the homepage of the website, but then yesterday's program you'll find in the archives section. I hope that you've enjoyed this presentation. We so appreciate Congressman Barry Loudermilk. He is one of the good guys, folks. He's one of the congressmen that really does have a biblical worldview, stands for truth, fights for the things that we believe in, and his story just incredible. Had the chance to hear it at the ProFamily Legislators Conference and wanted you, our listeners, to be able to hear that as well. As the coming weeks engage in a lot of debate about guns and gun control and safety and the right of self-defense, there are going to be a lot of people that want to pass feel-good legislation. They want a virtue signal, and they just feel like they have to do something. And I understand that. Nobody likes these mass murder events. And they're not mass shootings, they're mass murder events. And we need to stop them. And the way that we stop them is for government to get out of the way and stop preventing us from protecting ourselves. What we need from these politicians is a national reciprocity bill that would allow you to carry your handgun in any state in America. If you have a concealed carry license in your home state, you should be able to carry all across the country. You don't have to trade in your driver's license when you cross state lines. You shouldn't have to trade in your concealed carry license. That is the one piece of legislation that would save more lives than any of this gun control that they are proposing. In fact, all of the gun control measures they're proposing are going to cost lives. They're going to make it harder for the good people to defend themselves and easier for the criminal to take advantage of those good people. So I urge you to call your members of Congress, encourage them to pass national reciprocity, and then, of course, as always, I encourage you to come train with us. Come to one of our constitutional defense courses. We'll train you on the Constitution so you have the intellectual ammunition, but we'll also train you on handgun defense, how to defend yourself and your family, even if you've never touched a gun before or you've shot your whole life. It's incredible fellowship. We have a great time. We have our own private ranges. It's just our folks, and just really good fellowship. Mask-free zone, by the way, and just a great place to go and get to see some smiling faces and also learn a lot at the same time. If you'd like to do that, visit constitutioncoach.com. That's constitutioncoach.com. Thanks for listening to WallBuilders Live.
We stand undivided forever.